In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to talk about possibility. What do I mean by possibility? I mean answering questions like, will the stock market go up? Will you get that job you applied for? Will your manager be in a good mood today? Maybe, probably, or probably not. This is how we talk about possibility. Let's start with probably. That means that you are pretty sure something will happen. You're not certain. It's not 100%. But you can say you're fairly certain that something will happen. That's like saying it's 80 or 90%. Another way of saying the same thing is, there's a really good chance. In that case, chance doesn't mean opportunity. It means probability. How about a bit of practice with these expressions for saying something will probably happen? Listen to each example. Then repeat it for yourself. Ready? Let's get started.
Hero will probably take the job at our European office.
It seems likely that our marketing budget will be approved.
There's a really good chance we'll beat our targets this month.
I'm fairly certain that we'll pass the safety inspection.
In one of those examples, we used the word likely. You can use this word just like probably. So we can say something like, it will likely rain. But it also works as an adjective. In other words, you can say that rain is likely. So it can be used to mean both probably and probable. But what about when you're not so sure? What if there's a 50% chance of something happening? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Well, this is when helping verbs like might, may, or could are useful. For example, I might get the job, but I'm not sure. And if you think a fact might or might not be true, you can say, it may be that something is true. For example, it may be that we can't increase sales. That's a way of saying, maybe we can increase sales, but maybe we can't. Let's try these different ways of expressing the idea of something may be happening. Remember to repeat the examples after you hear them.
Well, we might see a drop in sales next month.
Judy could come by this afternoon, but I'm not sure.
It may be that we need more office space next year.
There's a 50-50 chance we can get this contract.
Great work. And did you hear another chance expression? This time, we said there's a 50-50 chance of something happening. In other words, there's a 50% chance it will and a 50% chance it won't. It's 50-50. So we've talked about probably and maybe, but what about probably not? There are a few ways to say that you think something probably won't happen. For one, you can say that you doubt it will happen. To make it even less probable, you can say you seriously doubt it will happen. You might also say, I don't think we can count on it happening. That's just like saying you doubt it will happen. We also have an adjective that is the opposite of likely, and that's unlikely. And for extra emphasis, you can say something is highly unlikely. But here's one tricky thing. You can say it will likely rain, but you can't say it will unlikely rain. That word unlikely is only an adjective, not an adverb. So you can say rain is highly unlikely. How about some more practice? Let's try these ways of saying probably not. Once again, repeat the examples after you hear them.
I seriously doubt Dan will want to come work for us.
Finishing the project by May is highly unlikely.
There's very little chance that the delivery will be here by noon.
I don't think we can count on nice weather for the event.
Did you notice the chance expression in those examples? This time, we said there's very little chance of something. That just means it probably won't happen. All right, we've practiced some useful ways of talking about possibility, but we should really hear how this sounds in a conversation. Let's listen to a short dialogue between Jane and Robert. They are talking about the possibility of their company moving to another city. Let's listen.
I hear we might be moving to Chicago.
Actually, I seriously doubt we'll do that.
Oh, really? What have you heard?
Well, it seems likely that we'll move to Cleveland instead.
Can you hear the possibility expressions? Jane starts by saying they might move to Chicago, but Robert seriously doubts that will happen. Instead, he says it seems likely that they'll move to Cleveland. Now, it's your turn to practice. We'll repeat the dialogue, but this time, we're going to beep out the second speaker's words. You have to say those parts yourself. Remember to start by saying you seriously doubt what Jane says. Then say it seems likely you'll move to Cleveland. Ready? Here we go.
I hear we might be moving to Chicago. Oh, really? What have you heard?
All right. That's all for today's lesson. We've learned some useful ways of talking about possibility, and saying whether you think something will happen or not. We'll be back soon with some more useful English expressions. Until then, so long and happy learning. You're learning with 9 to 5 English. Business English for the workplace. Hi, Tim here with another 9 to 5 English lesson. Today, we're going to learn how to talk about times and dates in English. If you're like most people in business, every day is scheduled down to the minute. We've all got meetings, timelines, tasks, and deadlines to worry about. And it seems like our phones are constantly buzzing with calendar notifications. To keep these complex schedules up to date, we often have to ask people when something is going to happen. An easy way to do that is with the word when, like when is the meeting? That could mean either the date or calendar day or the time. So, if you need to be more specific, you might ask, at what time is the meeting? Or, what's the date for the meeting? Let's try these ways of asking about when something will happen. Listen to each example, then repeat it for yourself. Ready? Let's get started.
Could you tell me when the meeting is scheduled?
What's the date for the product launch?
At what time is the delivery supposed to arrive?
When do you need this report by?
That first example is about when a meeting is scheduled. That's a common way of asking when something is arranged to take place. You can also ask when something is supposed to happen. Now, if you know that someone is asking about a date or the day when something is scheduled, what can you say? Well, it depends. If it's one specific day, then you say it will happen on that date. If you're not sure of the exact date, you can say it will happen around that date. And if it's something that has to happen sometime before a certain day, you can say it must happen by that date. Does that make sense? Why don't we try some examples to make sure this is clear? Remember to repeat the examples after you hear them.
The conference will begin on July 14th.
Our staff retreat will run from September 3rd to the 5th.
We'll need to finish the new website by the 12th.
We should get together sometime around January the 4th.
Of course, you probably noticed that not everything happens on or before one single day. Some events, like a company retreat, happen over several days. In that case, as you heard, you can say something runs from one date to another date. And when you say those dates, remember the special form of the number. We don't say January 1, 2, or 9, we say January 1st, 2nd, or 9th. So we've talked about dates, but how do we talk about the time of day? Well, there are several important expressions you need to know. Firstly, we don't say on a time, but rather at a time. Like, the office opens at 9 a.m. But just like dates, if you're not sure exactly when something happens, you can use around. So you might say something like, the delivery should be here around 3 p.m. And notice that we use a.m. to indicate the morning hours and p.m. for the afternoon. Talking about time also means talking about duration, or how long something happens. A useful word in this case is last. For example, we can say a meeting lasts 1 hour. Let's try some practice with these time expressions. Once again, repeat the examples after you hear them.
The webinar starts at 10 a.m. sharp and lasts about an hour.
We should be able to finish up around 4:30.
It's 3:30 now, so we've got a couple hours to go.
I'm hoping we can get there sometime between 9 and 10.
So what does it mean if you have a couple of hours to go? Saying you have a certain amount of time to go means you have that amount of time remaining. So if it's 9:30 and the meeting is supposed to finish at 10, then you have 30 minutes to go. Okay, so we've practiced some examples on their own. But how do these expressions sound in a conversation? Let's listen to a short dialogue between Bill and Laura. They're talking about when a factory tour is going to happen. Let's listen.
Were you able to schedule the factory tour?
Yes, the tour will take place on August the 4th.
Great. And did you set a time on that day?
We'll start at 1 p.m. and finish up around 2:30.
That seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? When Bill asks about the scheduled factory tour, Laura tells him it will take place on a certain date. And when he asks about the time of day, she tells him when it will start and around when it will finish. Now it's your turn to practice. We'll repeat the dialogue, but this time we're going to beep out the second speaker's words. You will have to say those parts yourself. Remember that the tour will happen on August 4th, begin at 1 p.m. and finish around 2:30.
Were you able to schedule the factory tour? Great. And did you set a time on that day?
All right, that about does it for this lesson. We've learned some great ways to ask about when things will happen and talk about dates and times. We'll be back soon with some more useful English expressions. Until then, so long and happy learning. You're learning with 9 to 5 English. Business English for the workplace. Hi, Tim here with another 9 to 5 English lesson. Today, we're going to learn how to describe people and their characteristics in English. Listen in on any office conversation or meeting, and you'll hear a lot of talk about people. Who we like, who we don't like, who's right for a team, who should get a promotion, who is going on vacation. The list of topics goes on and on. And one aspect of people we often discuss is their appearance or how they look. To do that, we use adjectives like tall or short or well-dressed or heavy or thin. When we describe people, we also talk about the color of their hair. And here's a couple of special hair words for you. Brunette means someone with brown hair, and blonde refers to someone with light or yellow hair. Let's try describing people's appearance using some of this language. Listen to each example, then repeat it for yourself. Ready? Let's get started.
Gary is a tall, red-haired guy who usually wears glasses.
Bob looks a little bit like Dave, our former manager.
Jordan is really well dressed and always smiling.
Tina has long brown hair and green eyes.
Now, did you notice that expression, looks a little bit like? The basic expression there is looks like, as in Nancy looks like Tina. In other words, they appear similar. A couple more similar expressions for comparing people are sounds like and acts like. When we say someone acts like another person, we're talking about their behavior or what they do. Just like appearance, we often describe behavior with adjectives. For example, we might say someone is eager or enthusiastic. We might also talk about how they do things, like works hard or treats people with respect. Let's try some examples of describing people's behavior. Remember to repeat the examples after you hear them.
Charlie is always eager and ready to help.
I tend to work harder when I'm under pressure.
Kendra is the most enthusiastic person in the office.
Joe treats everyone with a lot of respect.
As you heard, it's not only other people that we describe. Sometimes we describe ourselves, especially in situations like job interviews. And not only do we describe behavior, we also describe character. Character is about what type of person someone is. It might include behavior, but it also includes someone's overall personality. To talk about character, we rely once again on adjectives. And the more adjectives you know, the better you can describe people's character. Some people are serious, while others are fun-loving. Some people are hard-working, while others are lazy. Some people are shy, while others are outgoing. Let's practice some of these adjectives for describing character. Once again, repeat the examples after you hear them.
Nancy seems pretty serious, but she's always fair.
The right candidate should be hardworking and flexible.
I would describe myself as a good learner and resourceful.
Daisy can be quite shy, but she's very smart.
You probably know most of those adjectives, but resourceful might be a new word. If someone is resourceful, it means they are good at finding ways to solve problems. That's a great way to describe yourself in a job interview. Okay, so we've practiced describing people with some examples, but how does this sound in a conversation? Let's listen to a short dialogue between Kent and Paula. They're talking about a person who has applied for a job at their company. Let's listen.
Remind me again, which candidate was Jason?
Jason was the tall guy with blonde hair.
Oh, right. And how was his interview?
Well, he seems smart, but I wonder how flexible he is.
That's not too difficult, right? When Kent asks Paula to describe Jason, she says that he's tall and has blonde hair. And when Kent asks how Jason's interview went, she says he seems smart, but she wonders if he's flexible. Now it's your turn to practice. We'll repeat the dialogue, but this time we're going to beep out the second speaker's words. You will have to say those parts yourself. Remember to describe Jason as tall with blonde hair and say he's smart, but you wonder if he's flexible.
Remind me again, which candidate was Jason? Oh, right. And how was his interview?
All right, that's it for this lesson. We've learned some great ways to describe people's appearance, behavior, and character. We'll be back soon with some more useful English expressions. Until then, so long and happy learning.